I call my presentation "Cure of Learned Helplessness" because I think that this is what we are experiencing in the West. This is a kind of autoimmune disease. We have all possible resources to support Ukraine, to defeat Russia in a quick manner, to liberate oppressed nations of Northern Eurasia. But we in the West do not do it. Next. Oh, lovely. We do not do it because we learned to be helpless. Just a few examples of you may remember this guy, the former president of United States of America, George Bush, the older one, who on August 1st, 1991, he made his best to preserve unity of Soviet Union when at the Kiev Rada, well, Ukrainian Rada in Kiev, asked Ukrainian communists, because he did not meet with the leaders of national movement, to keep together with this great country of yours, meaning Soviet or Russian Empire. Well, he was not the first doing the same thing. In the history of my country, Czechoslovakia, in 1938, my grandparents experienced the Munich betray, where and when French and British prime ministers decided to bow and let Hitler to have what he wanted to have. They chose shame and they got War II, said a little bit later Winston Churchill, who was forced to deal with the mess they created. We don't need to go too so deep into history. Again, much more recent things. We see that similar behavior demonstrated by the recent leaders of Western world. And the question is whether this is only the mice phenomenon alone. Mice meaning money, well, money certainly. This George Schroeder, he's corrupt to his bones. Yeah. Ideology, sure, for President Obama, ideology of America being weak and retreating from the history, that's his philosophy of life, of philosophy of America. Coercion, I skipped the coercion possibility, but there is another American president where coercion could play a role. And then we have, of course, ego, important part in this behavior of Western leaders, which is, I think, demonstrated on the third picture. These politicians are building on some common narratives, and those common narratives, they accept the common narratives and they repeat them. And, well, what were these predictions built on in February 22? US concerned Kyiv could fall to Russia within days. And that's CNN, yeah? The exclusive from the, I think it was some Time or no, the second one. I forgot which medium it is. Anyhow, an important American medium. Exclusive, US expect Kyiv to fall in days as Ukraine source warns of encirclement. And a very recent one from Washington Post from December 4th, just a few days old. Miscalculations, divisions, mark offensive planning by US, Ukraine. Yeah? These people, these journalists, they were predicting quick fall of Ukraine, and they stick to the narrative. When the reality did not confirm their expectations, they are repeating them again in December. It's the same people repeating the same narrative again and again and again. Now, the history of failures of this, what I called unholy alliance of Western analysts, media, and politicians. A few points on that matter. The first enemy of knowledge is what we believe to know. It's not what we do not know, but what we believe we know. And there was, in the Soviet times, the Sovietology, plenty of Sovietology professorships who completely failed to anticipate collapse of communism in Europe in 1989, and then collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, or their predecessors failed to anticipate Hitler's behavior in 1938. there is simply a school of thought in West which, and Janusz was talking about it, so I probably do not need to repeat it. There are large number of influential people who build their academic analytic careers on basically preaching to eternity of Russian Empire. Well, then we have a media. And the media, one of the media problems is that the bad news do not sell media, good news are no news. The news for media are bad news, and therefore they are urged to publish these kind of pessimistic views, and they ignore plenty of optimistic news, which are. I mean, Russia is breaking apart. It is economically in the advancement. It is being demilitarized quickly. Many myths on which Russian Empire is built are being broken. But they do not report about it. They report about the problems in, the fronts of in Ukraine, where the expectations were not met, let's say. Yeah. And then we have a fundamental problem with the democracy, with the functioning of democracy, and it is that to not act is preferred mode of democratic politicians. To act may upset voters. To act means taking the risk. And therefore, the most convenient strategy is to sit through the crisis and keep justifying status quo. And that's what they do, what our leaders in the Western countries tend to do. Well, commitment to old knowledge is not absolute. In recent times, Janusz is writing about something very different. But in 1969, a Russian historian, Andrey wrote a book about upcoming collapse of Soviet Union. It was even translated, Will Soviet Union Survive Until 1984? He wrote it in 1969, when the Soviet Union was on the, the top of its power. They were a space-going country. Americans were, behind or just getting equal in the space exploration. They just suppressed the revolution in Czechoslovakia in 1968, with the invasion of 500,000 soldiers and so on. Here, he saw it. He saw it coming, but not the Western analysts. A Russian historian in Russia was able to see what's going on. But from the Western perspective, he was, the Western analyst's perspective, he was a kind of exotic guy who, well, he's writing about the wishful thinking. Well, he was only, 7 years wrong, which from the historical perspective is he was very exact. Now, our commitment to old knowledge. Global Firepower Index in 2023, second strongest army in the world is Russian army, and it's 0.002 weaker than American army. It's a total, pardon my French, bullshit. But they repeat it now in 2023, and this is quoted in mass media because the Global Firepower Index is there, and it's a big name. It's a total nonsense. But through this analytical kind of work, the Western politicians are led to believe that they are facing a big, powerful bear. Well, commitment to old knowledge is also our fears of nuclear annihilation, which Russia can cause. Despite the fact that Russian nuclear facilities can be eliminated by precision and conventional strikes. We know that now. I mean, the Ukrainian army, with their limited material and technological resources, was able to attack nuclear airport, yeah, with the strategic bombers. Yeah, somewhere in Volga, forget the name. And do we really believe that Muscovites are ready to die for, let's say, Kamchatka or Norilsk? Seriously? These billionaires who control that country? Not. But we allow to believe that. Another commitment to old knowledge, well, these are two charts which show deterioration of Russian space flights since Anschluss of Crimea. Crimea. It's completely ignored by Western media and public. The most of Europeans and Americans still believe that the Russians are a big space power. But it's deteriorating very quickly and very significantly, while American and, I have to admit, Chinese role in space exploration is growing. This is just one parameter, number of flights. Yeah? There are many others in which, like the number of satellites or the deep space research, in which Russia is not a player at all. Yeah? They are just sending some rockets, few rockets a year, because they still have supplies and they use technology which was developed in 1970s. So, you know, that's the reality. But we, the West, keep loving Potemkin's villages of Russian greatness and power because it enables our leaders to do nothing, even vis-a-vis genocide. Vis-a-vis genocide in Chechnya, vis-a-vis genocide in Ukraine today. Well, doing nothing like justify for the West not to get prepared for the upcoming disintegration of Russia. We failed after 1991, we, the West, failed, and nothing happened, except genocide in Chechnya, Ukraine, and nuclear and missiles proliferation to Iran and North Korea, and arming Hamas, Hezbollah, and so on. But voters do not pay attention to that, so it's like nothing happened. Yeah? Now, the map which is there is my hypothetical map of the disintegration of Russia, which is in this book, which, please, I brought 30 copies of it. Be so kind, take of them, they are back there. You may find there some useful, productive ideas when you think about how to approach what is coming. And I believe this is the last slide. So what should be our response, the response of the free world to alliance of authoritarian regimes and their satellites? Well, we have to start with treating our immune deficiency, our own failures. We are facing the enemies who are much weaker in many sense, but our disease, our immunocompromised status makes us weak. Well, the keystone of this alliance is Russian Empire. Dealing with it is also the lowest hanging fruit. To deal with China and the Arab world crisis is much more difficult to deal with than to deal with Russia. To deal with alliance of authoritarian regime, we must first deal with unholy alliance of our commitment to obsolete knowledge, to media bias, and politicians conveniently committed to status quo. And the mice syndrome too, of course. We need to trigger debate. Well, that's what we are trying, but we need to move ahead with it. Trigger debate about disintegration of Russia among the elites in the West, in the European Union countries, in America, Japan in particular. We need to design process and parameters of managed disintegration condition of Russia, conditions for recognition of new states. And I'm proposing to have something like was Paris Peace Conference of 1919 to hold it in Kiev next year. And we need to start to build capacities for independence of new states of Northern Eurasia, which already heard, we already heard calls for doing this. Well, and indeed, it all starts with winning the war in Ukraine, and that's what we must support by all our possibilities. Thank you very much for your attention, and Slava Ukraini!